What's going on, everybody? I am joined today by Danny Ortega. One thing we definitely have in common is we share the same name here. He's
Great
my brother
name,
from
great
another
name.
mother. Uh,
Yes, sir. And
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Untamed Opinion. That is the name of the YouTube channel, and that is what I named it here. I had a discussion earlier with a detective regarding the whole George Floyd situation. I reached out to you because I saw some of your posts on Instagram regarding some things, and I like a lot what you said. Um, and I really I'm really glad to for you to give me your opinion on everything, because whether we agree or disagree on anything, we've always been able to talk, and I've always been able to call you a friend. So I really appreciate you joining me, man.
absolutely, thank you very much for having me. I mean, it's been a while since I find it funny when growing up when I was younger and you knew me like 17, 18. It's funny, we never really had these conversations. And then as I leave, we become so much more politically aware. I think like for us, this generation, this is kind of next to like the civil rights. I think kind of was such a status quo over the last 25, 30 years. And then, moving on to when like, we had a presidential election and stuff is when we started to take the relationship to not just being friends, but being to the point where we would have actual intellectual counterparts. And that's kind of really dope that we've been able to grow our friendship and we don't have the same political views, which is great. So it
Right.
goes to show like you can still be friends with someone that you don't have to share the same ideologies with, as long as you have the ability to sit down and listen and agree to disagree. I think that's where we would just, if we could all learn a lot about that if we just agree to disagree.
No, I no, my sentiments exactly. I don't know your true political. I mean, I, I'm not going to assume your political position one way or the other. But I think it's very important for not only to listen, but to also respect the other person's opinion and just be civil about it. You
Correct.
know, not everybody's going to see the same thing. I am sure we agree plenty in political. I'm sure there's plenty we don't agree in. Uh, but this particular discussion is not a political discussion,
No.
as we said before we started this episode here, and because there's nothing really political about this. The whole thing with George Floyd started because a white officer put his knee on the back of a black man's neck for no reason, and for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and the whole thing sickened me because I am a supporter of the men in blue. I'm a big supporter of the police department. I'm a big supporter of them, and for what this guy did, it is truly sickening and truly does not represent the vast majority of cops out there that are good cops.
Correct.
We have common friends that are in law enforcement. We know them personally,
Mm-hmm.
and they are good people. And it really does sickens me. And one of the conversations I had earlier today with the detective, and he spoke with his colleagues, and everybody's really sickened by the whole thing. And here we have a situation, in my view, here we have a situation where this event happened, and it's one of the rare events that happened where 99.9999999, there's always going to be that 0.0001 of the population somewhere that's not going to see the
Yep.
opposite of everybody. This is the one instance of 99.9999% of everybody is on the same side. Everybody,
Yeah.
everybody I've ever talked to, everybody I've ever seen it, is what this cop did was horrific. He should have the book thrown at him. He needs to be in jail. He needs to be put in Gen Pop and let the Gen Pop, get out.
Handle him. Yeah. Handle him.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And it really saddened me what happened to George Floyd, because no matter what he did or didn't do, he did not deserve
Doesn't
that
deserve
one
to
way.
die. But you
Right.
didn't deserve to die. And you know what? You said something, Dan, and I think it's funny because I find that the things that I hear and which frustrates me is, when people say, oh, like the kind of disclaimer in the front, like you have to say, hey, I'm all for law enforcement. I support law enforcement. No
Right.
one is saying anything about law enforcement. What we're saying is there is a problem in America, and this is not a black problem. This is a problem in America
Okay.
because for that mistreatment of people of color, and I won't just say African Americans, I'm gonna say people of color,
Right.
by the police department. It's just plain and fact. We have too many cases where you are seeing this, and it's being caught on TV. So it's being caught live on TV, whatever, cop cams, whatever you call it. Too many times this is happening, and the problem is we as the minority or community, the minority community, feel that there is not enough justice, or there's not enough. You're saying that in this instance with George Floyd, 99% of the people feel right. And what we're saying is, if that's the case, what was the other situations where there was doubt? Because we have tons of video evidence of other police officers killing unarmed minority individuals. And it just seems that at some point, there's not enough being done from a repercussion standpoint. You know, like, I'll give you an example. If you and I walk into a store and they catch us stealing, is there an investigation? No. The store calls the police. The police will look at the camera. They'll say, okay, did you put this Snicker bar or that TV in your pocket? Yes. Well, you go to jail. So our frustration as the African-American or even community of color is, if you have video of this instance happen, where is the doubt? Where's the investigation that needs to take place? I don't understand. And I get it because of the law enforcement, there's certain channels and things like that. But I mean, at some point in case, there's gotta be, like, for you to take that long to arrest an individual, and for today, and this happened a week ago, for you to finally arrest 3 people who were part of there, because that to me is the sickening part, because we're watching this country go through hell. Over the last week, this country has gone through hell. Everywhere you look, people are angry. They don't know how to articulate their anger. And what do? They are displaying it and taking away from the narrative. Let me tell you, I'm going to go on record and say this. As an African American, and I know other people will say this, I'm anti-looting. I don't think we should be burning down our community in protest.
Agreed.
However, I'm going to take a step back and understand, when you're mad, what do you do when you're mad? You lose all thought. You don't react right. You don't have the same comprehension that you have when you're calm. So again, you lash out. When you're a child, you lash out a certain way. When you're a teenager, you lash out. Still, adults do the same thing. People win Super Bowls and do these things and still lose their mind over being happy. What do you think about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of pain? And over the last 10 years, this has been caught on film. Since Rodney King, over the last 10 years, there have been more police violence on people of color caught on film. And it's just the fact of the matter is, we can't get the right amount of justice that we deserve. And you're right. I hate that we have to come out here and say, wait. I'm not against the police, or I'm for police. We understand they have a dangerous job. We know that, but we're not talking to the people who do their job. We're talking to the people who don't do their job, and why the police are getting lumped in. And I would love to maybe if you ask one of our friends who are police officers, why aren't you doing more to stand up for the people who aren't representative of what you're doing? I mean, you're allowing your hard work of doing the right thing to be supersede, just like how the looting. What's our message? Our message is we want equality. We want proper justice for lives being taken. But the message is being gone because of why? The looting and the fire and the crime that's taken place with the protests. Well, the same thing. If you get up every day as a police officer and properly serve your neighborhood and do this, well, your message and your narrative is getting lost by these cops who are now what? Killing unarmed Black people, or crooked cops for taking money that they shouldn't. All these other things, it's those cops that are necessarily killing it for all the rest of you. Do you know what I'm saying? So to me, that's the hard part of just this whole thing. And it's sickening. I mean, I wish more people would stand up and realize this is not a Black issue. It just so happens Black people are dying. It's not it's an American issue.
No, I hear what you're saying, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying. When you brought up why did it take so long for the other 3 officers to get arrested, why did it take so long for Derek Chauvin to get arrested? That's the exact question I asked the detective today, because he spent 15 plus years on the force, and that was the exact question. Why did it take so long? I mean, here, I have my questions right here. It was one of the questions. You probably can't see it, but it's right here. Why did it take so long? Because that's one of the things I wanted to know. It's one of the things I really haven't been reading. and I don't want to put words in his mouth, and I don't want to misquote him. I encourage you to listen to what I posted today on the channel. I know you'll check it out at some point.
Absolutely.
You know, just summarizing what he says, because when you go and charge somebody, especially that he didn't say especially a police officer, but when you go and charge somebody, it has to be, when you go and charge somebody with third-degree murder or second-degree manslaughter or whatever charges are going to be, there has to be proof for there to be a charge. And he explains a lot better than I could right now, because I don't want to misquote him or missummarize what he's saying. But he actually explains why that when this event happened Monday night, the 4 police officers were fired Tuesday afternoon. All right, just fired. And everybody's like, why are you fired? Why weren't they arrested? And that was my exact question to him. Why were they not arrested there on the spot on Tuesday? Why were there not anybody in handcuffs? Why did it wait until Friday? Because I was a little frustrated too. I was like, none of that made any sense. That's one of the questions I asked him, and he actually answers that in that particular segment when I asked him that question.
I'm gonna go and watch that interview, because I have questions too, and I'm gonna post this and repost this on mine for a lot of people that do have these questions, because to me, and I'm just going to speak to you from a person of color, Dan, we obviously have different experiences with, living in this world. We do. There are going to be certain things, and this is where our friendship has grown, and we've talked about it. There are going to be certain things that I'm going to experience in this world that you'll never have to. And that's just the way the world is.
True.
For me, when an African-American or a person of color is deemed responsible or anywhere associated with a crime, we are arrested and we are held until either one of two things. You can find the charges to put against us, at which point, if not, then we're released. But everyone here has said, yeah, they booked me, but they couldn't charge me, so they let me go. Any person of color is like, they got me, they realized they couldn't charge me, so they let me walk. At this point, and let's just look at it from a business standpoint. If you are the Minneapolis Police Department, from an optics standpoint, you should have walked those police officers in handcuffs. Even if you internally were saying, listen, guys, for the peace, we have to walk you out in handcuffs. We're going to drive you around the block. We're going to put you in the precinct. We're going to let you out in an unmarked car and drop you off at home. For the optics alone, you should have done that.
It's a good point.
For the optics, you could have easily said, yo, we're going to keep you overnight. We're going to lock you up. We'll put you, the 4 of you, in a cell, individual cell, in a precinct. We're not going to put you in Gen Pop, whatever the case may be, but just until we get this, till we decide, for the optics alone. Listen, you guys did this, not us. So you guys got to take the bullet. We're not going to have the entire police force taking the bullet for the actions of the 3 of you, especially for this one individual, and the 3 of you who chose to sit there and not do anything. But for the optics alone, you should have done that if you are the police commissioner. And that's our issue as the African-American community. When it comes to police officers, they're given the benefit of the doubt, regardless of the film, regardless of the proof that's right against them. And it's still the company line of they're put on administrative leave, or they're sent home, or it takes a few days for them to figure out what they're going to do. And then they're like, well, we've fired them. But that's not enough. You look at Eric Garner, you choked this man out on the street. You choked the man out on the street. And even then it was a couple of days before they arrested him. And if I'm honestly, and I don't want to misquote, because that's the one thing I don't want to do is sound ignorant, but I'm not 100% sure if he was charged either. I know he was fired. I know he was charged. I don't know if he was found guilty. And if you cannot be found guilty of choke, if I choke you out right now, Dan, and choke you out and kill you, I'm going to jail. Like, there's no ifs and buts about it. Like, my lawyer is going to have to try to cause reasonable doubt for you to say, well, Dan came at me with a knife. That was the reason I choked him out. But other than that, if it's on camera and all people can see is me choking you out, and in a situation where there were other people there to restrain you, they're going to say, well, why didn't you let go? Why didn't you do these? So to me, this is the problem that we have, and why I say it's not a black problem. This is not a minority problem. This is an American problem, because it's these laws that police officers are able to hide behind, and it's these laws or these situations that lead to mistrust in places, in minority communities. We don't trust the police. You have a different interpretation of when you call them. Think about it. Black people don't call the police. We don't want the police in our business. A domestic dispute turns totally different when the police come to our house than when they come to your house. Totally different. So again, we do not want police. The police are the last people African Americans call when we have no choice, because we understand they're not coming. I don't want to even say a 50-50. There's probably a 20% chance you're going to get a cop that's going to come in and try to de-escalate situations and things like that. Most of the time they come in, they try to escalate situations. And again, nothing to do with political, affiliation, nothing to do with that. But this is ingrained in the institution. That's what they call it, institutional racism, because this is things that have gone on for years, and there's laws and there's things like that that allow these people to do that and then hide behind the badge. And if you ask me as a person of color, it's frustrating when, I've been a victim of that myself. I got pulled. I had to go to jail for something that I didn't even do. First of all, you know me well enough. You know my character. You know me well enough. I've never been, the thing that people will never say about Daniel Ortega is he's rude, he's disrespectful. Never. That's not me. That's not me as a person. So for a police officer to tell me that I was rude, disobeying him, not doing what I was supposed to do, well, what did you ask me to do? No, rather than just saying again, you know what? You got in your feelings of some kind of way. I mean, guy pulled me over, checked my driver's license, checked my registration, checked the car, making sure it was owned in my name, asking me all these questions, driving an Audi, young guy, worked hard for that. I worked hard for that, but it doesn't fit the model of what they're used to. And to me, that's what leads to this. And so, I'm not trusting of the police. It's very tough for me. And again, I'm not going to throw the disclaimer when people say, oh, but I love police. I have a ton of friends that are police officers, white, black, Hispanic, doesn't matter. And literally, they've all said, I text every single one of them, except for the one that we know together because I don't have his number. But I said, yo, I am afraid for you right now. Mm-hmm. I'm afraid for you, even as a white police officer. I'm afraid for you because I know your views, I know your character, and I know you don't stand for this. I'm afraid because I don't want you to be pitted against as not for the shield. Because what happens then you're ostracized in your own in your own line of work. As an African American, you have to walk a very fine line in that good old boy system as being a police officer. Same thing as a Hispanic. So I feel bad for them. And, again, this is not a knock on cops, and I hate having to throw the disclaimer, but it's just right now, your image is not very good. It's just not. And it hasn't been for a very, very, very long time. And it's time you good cops take back your job. It's time you take it back. Stop letting people ruin the perception and your hard work. Stop letting people, bad apples, who do it.
So when you talk about the trust between not only you, but when let's just make it more general. Let's just talk about, because the same question I asked the detective earlier in the earlier conversation today, and I'm going to ask you the same question. What do you think the law enforcement, not just police officers, but law enforcement in general, in your own community, what do you think they can do to really bridge the gap, to really, weave the fabric of between law enforcement and the public, between law enforcement,
ingratiate themselves in the community.
Yeah, how
ingratiate. It's simple.
What do you think?
Get out of their cars.
Really, to gain the trust and to gain everything back.
I'm from New York City. Growing up in New York City, I saw police officers right before. I would say probably I remember before the Amadou Diallo and the Abner Louima. Amadou Diallo was the gentleman who was shot 41 times reaching for his wallet. And Abner Louima was a guy of Haitian descent who actually right across the street from my house was a nightclub. He was beat up in the nightclub, and that's where the police officers shoved the plunger up his butt. That was that famous thing. Right before then, before those situations happened, I saw police officers walk the neighborhood. Like you would see police officers like beat cops. They would just walk up and down, turn, let their presence be known in the neighborhood. And you know what? They knew some of the kids. They watched us. Some of them were local who lived in the neighborhood, had grown up in the neighborhood. They knew they knew my uncle. They knew my next door neighbor. They knew the old guy down there. So they ingratiated themselves to the community. They knew the people they were policing. After those situations, you started to see police officers never get out of their car unless it was trouble. So all they did was drive. And then now, because of that, if you had a police officer that was walking, you couldn't expect them to walk 5 miles. he walked maybe a 20 block radius, up, down, all the way. Then another cop would do that, and so on. When you're driving, the territories become bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't know the people in their community anymore. You're just like a number, or you're just another person in the neighborhood that looks like he's up to no good. Whereas you've seen kind of like in small towns where the police officer, they're a little hesitant to really charge you with anything major until it's major. Why? Because they know your grandmother. They know your dad. You know what I mean? Like, they know these things. And, this is a subject for another issue, but I mean, it's kind of like the same with, when they talk about gun violence in school. I think you took police officers out of the school. Those are just same things. You cannot allow police officers to police neighborhoods they don't know anything about. You can't. You don't. And I'll even give you this. If you're, and this is crazy because New York, people think New York is New York City. They don't understand that there's so much vast area in upstate New York that people don't even know. Buffalo and, Binghamton and all these places. If your interaction is never with Black people or people of color, and you become a New York City police department, a police officer, there is a strong chance 80% of your interaction is going to be with people of color. If you have no interaction with people of color, how are you supposed to police people of color? How? If you don't have a Black friend, how do you know anything about Black people? If you've never come into interaction with anyone of the opposite other than white, people who look like you, have the same ideals as you, go to church like you. Again, I hate to say look like you, but like, there's not many people outside of you. There's no difference. You all kind of do the same thing. How do you accept change? You become ignorant to anything different than what you know. So that's the issue.
When I asked that question to the detective earlier, he said almost identical to what you said. He's like, how can you take a cop or someone, let's just say someone that's out of the academy, so someone who, fresh off the beat, how can you take a cop that's white like me, and we grew up in the same area, or we didn't grow up in the same area, but we knew each other because we lived in the same area, and, over in Broward County, and I was in Dade, Broward, but we were, Miramar, Northwest Dade, Miami Lakes. And, you can't take a white cop from Weston who knows everything about the Weston area that's predominantly white over there.
And affluent.
And go put him in Attapata. You can't do it.
You can't do it. Because you know why? The minute they get out of the car, they're afraid. Because this does not look like them. The person doesn't look like them. They're nervous. And that's the reason why when you talk about, and I was so raw on Thursday night. I was so raw. I remember sitting down in my kitchen and talking to my mom because my feelings were so raw. And even after talking to her for like 90 minutes, I didn't go to bed till like 3:30 in the morning because I had to sit down and just get all of these things out. And I wrote this long thing that I wanted to post on Instagram. And then I thought about it and I said, you know what? Coaching positions and trying to apply for other jobs, you got to be very careful about what you say because those things can come back. You've seen people lose their jobs over remarks that they made in a moment. So I said, let me take a deep breath. Just getting it out helped. Sure. But the thing that I remember, and I said, what makes me very, very very nervous about police officers, or very apprehensive about police officers when they say this line: I was fearful of my life. Okay, one, you weren't drafted to be a police officer. You chose to be a police officer knowing it is a very dangerous job. Okay, that's one. Two, if I go somewhere, forget I'm a police officer, you and me, Dan, you, me, Steven, and Rodney. Let's just say the four of us. We go play basketball down at Opelika.
Right.
I'm less nervous. Now, if I go to Opelika by myself to play ball, I'm probably going to be a little nervous, right? By myself. But if I go to Opelika with my four guys that I know that have my back, worst case situation, anything happens, I'm less nervous, right? That nerve is kind of subsided a little because I'm like, well, worst case scenario, at least I know I got Rodney. At least I know then you guys are not going to let anything happen to me, okay? They're going to have to get all of us. Let's run that back. I'm a police officer. I have three other police officers with me. We're all equipped with 9mm Berettas, fully loaded with 2 extra clips. We have a taser, a baton. We're given pepper spray, and we're given all individual hand-to-hand combat training. Where am I afraid? Where am I afraid? Where's the fear? Like, as just an African American, I told you I didn't need a gun to walk in Opelika. I said I walked in there with 3 other individuals. Mm-hmm. You walked into a situation already having the law behind your back and 3 other people with you. What are you afraid about? Mm-hmm. Once you've gotten that dude on the ground, at this point, it's now like crowd control, right? At this point, it's just, how do we wrestle him down? If a guy's continuing in the fight, that's what you tase him for. That's what you tase him for. I don't know if you remember, do you ever see the movie called Fruitvale Station? It's with Michael B. Jordan. It's about the Oscar Grant, the young man that was killed by the police officer in Oakland, riding on the barter system.
I've heard it. I haven't seen it.
So I'm not sure if this is for all police departments, but I know they removed, if you notice, tasers are on the leg of police officers and they're no longer on the belt. And the reason they're no longer on the belt is because in high pressure situations, you're asking a police officer to remember if his taser or if that is gun. So they moved it and they put it now at the leg so that you know to reach for your leg for non-lethal injuries. You are a police officer. Unless someone has a gun and is aiming that gun at you, every single time you reach for anything, it should be your taser and you should be lighting his ass up with a taser. It's that simple. It is that simple. If they're running from you, if you can't catch them with your taser, charge it to the game. There's no reason you should be shooting an unarmed, unless he's firing back at you, there's no reason you should be shooting anyone. There's no reason your gun should be drawn at all. Unless you know for 100% fact that they have a weapon. But too many times, police officers walk into, and what your officer just said, people from communities that don't know what it's like to police, the minute they get into situations, they reach for the one that's loaded. And when you reach for the one that's loaded and your heart is going like this and you're nervous and anything happens, you play PlayStation, how many times have you accidentally clicked R2 that's in a PlayStation game? Now imagine that being in real life. Yeah. So for me, that to me is why, it is what it is. And again, it's an American issue. We need people of all race, of all creed to understand that this needs to be reformed all the way through. There should be no more departments without body cams. There should be a new way of training. This is training. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. It's training. Because unless you tell me there's one, in my mind, I'm a conspiracy theorist. I don't believe there's a New York City Police Department, a Boston Police Department, LAPD. I believe that there's one police department that just filters down into different subsidiaries with one set of training. Because to tell me that universally every police department is having issues with people of color and having deaths of people of color, that's a training thing. And that means you need to scrap the training and you need to redo the training, because that's the problem. It's the training. And if people don't pass that test, you got to dig deep into their background. If they don't pass that test, put them in high stressful situations before you put them out in the field. If they don't pass that test, they don't deserve to be policing communities where it is a little bit more sketchy. You got to, be on your P's and Q's, but you also have to know who you got to watch. I talk to police detectives who are in drug-infested neighborhoods, and they've never once pulled their gun in drug-infested neighborhoods because they know who the drug dealers are. The drug dealers know them. They know how to make sure that they don't they know how to not over-police that neighborhood. I know police officers who live in the neighborhood and can't arrest people they live with because they'll disturb where they live. You know what I mean? Like, just think about that. Like, it's not like they're making $100,000 a year so they can go live in the suburbs. Some of these police officers live in predominantly minority areas, especially the black police officers. You think they're going to go and be a police officer in the neighborhood that they live? You think they're arresting people they see every single day? No, sometimes they got to turn the blind eye because they can't disturb the peace on where they live. I mean, I hate to say it, no, not really cursing on your show, but you're always taught don't shit where you eat.
Right.
So, but if you'll shit where you don't have to worry about living there, right?
Yeah, no,
If you get to do damage and get home to a whole different area where you don't have to deal with that type of stuff, and to answer this question too, what can be done differently? Well, your incentive shouldn't be how much tickets you write and quotas you fill and those things. Your incentive as a police officer is how much change do you do in your community, because you can't effectively make change in your community if it doesn't if your community is like 50 miles this way. What's your connection to the community? That's not where you live. So you have you have no ties to it. There's nothing rewarding you. You're like, shit, as long as this doesn't come to where I live, I'm good. I'm cool. Whatever. Let them kill each other. Whatever. No, it shouldn't be that way.
Right.
You should be doing what you can do to do that. It's like a basketball coach. You know what I mean? Like, that's just my thought. I mean, I could be wrong. There could be people that don't share that sentiment, but that to me is just how I look at it, you know?
I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong. That's just your honest opinion. You know, that's you give me your honest. It's nothing about right or wrong with this particular question. These are not right or wrong questions. These are not gotcha questions.
True. No, you're right.
These are just, you're giving your opinion. You're giving your honest opinion. I appreciate it. Just want to say two things here. Number one, me playing basketball in Opelika, yes, I would still be nervous. Still be nervous.
Yes. But it's funny. I went there after. Remember when you guys took me to play in that park?
You gotta tell me which part, because we played
in Opelika. In like the one off of 75th where you go down Hialeah, the one of Miami Gardens. I can't remember the name.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember the name of that part. I can't remember the name of it. But you guys took me there. I went there like probably twice with you guys. After that, I just started going by myself. Because at that point, I felt like, all right, whatever. Like I had made a name enough for myself, but people knew me well enough that like I really wasn't causing any problems. I was minding my business. I was there to hoop and go home. But I know, you know what I'm saying? So for me, like, you're right. But there are certain neighborhoods, like, I don't even go to certain neighborhoods. And I'm from that neighborhood. Like, I don't even walk around certain parts of Brooklyn, and I'm from Brooklyn. So.
And you mentioned the body cameras. You mentioned how police officers should have body cameras. Actually, my next door neighbor, we share a common, back here is where my garage is at. Mm-hmm. Not through this door, but, back there is where the garage is.
On the back side of your house, yeah.
And the back side of the house where the driveway is at. There's a big, there's like I don't know how to describe it. It's like a common driveway that splits off.
And then you all pull it, and then you pull into it. Yeah.
In my driveway faces another driveway, which is a neighbor across the street. Him and his wife are actually law enforcement from New York, and I want to say it's the Queens area. I could be wrong. I could misremember, but I think it's from the Queens area, somewhere in New York City, Queens, Brooklyn, one of those. And we were having a brief discussion about this, and he mentioned about body cams. He goes, the reason why a lot of body cams are not happening as quick as people think they should be happening is because they're so expensive to have. They're so expensive to maintain. Where you're going to store all this? How long do you have to store? What is all the SOP behind the standard operating procedures and
standard operating procedures? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's the SOP behind the whole body cameras? How many do you have to have? How long do you have to store things for? How much do they cost each? You have to maintain it if they get broken. I mean, there's a lot of expenses that go into that, which people don't realize. It's just not clicking. It's not putting an iPhone right here and just letting it go off for an entire day. There's it's an actual expense that happens. Are you going to raise everybody's taxes to cover that? I mean, I don't know what the answer to that is. I mean, would I love for there to be more dash cameras maybe on cops' cars, or for them to wear body cameras? I know a lot of them do. Maybe there's not enough of it out there.
So which one do you think?
I think one of the best solutions, and something that can happen that really doesn't cost money or cost very little, is what you said, is what the detective said earlier, is you start having these officers, like let's just say you have the Miami Lakes Police Department, right? Mm-hmm. For example, or the Miramar. We met each other because we were in Miramar at the same time, and you were living with the relative and whatnot, and you know what my situation was like. You know what I was doing at the time, and that's how we met. But let's just say the Miramar Police Department, right? And you take that department and you say, okay, Miramar has these boundaries, and this is what the Miramar Police Department do. What are they doing to really focus on the local level to really engage with the residents and really engage with the outreach to the people who live there. You know, what are they doing on a daily or weekly basis, or even a monthly basis? Are they having a monthly barbecue? Are they holding events regularly to promote the office, the police, the law enforcement, maybe even the fire department? What are they doing to really intertwine that with the residents, so the residents get to know them and they get to know their own people? You know, that they are policing, that they are trying to keep safe. And I think it all starts at the local level. Period. I think it all starts with the
Well,
local government.
that's funny because
That's where it starts.
I said, you know, people ask me, well, what's, you know, it's funny you said, I don't know why, but everyone's been like texting me and been like, yo, what do we do? You know, you're well spoken and you're really dialed into, you know, a lot of things that's going on, and you know, what do we do? And I'm like, listen, I don't have all the answers, but you know, if I had to say, you know, if I had to give my educated, you know, guess as far as to a solution, you mentioned it starting at the local level. This can't start at the top. So people think change is, I vote for my president, everything is great. It doesn't work that way. I'm
No, it
sorry.
doesn't.
Everything, it doesn't. There's so much more to life than just you voting for your president.
That's correct.
So when you talk about how do things change and how do we get better, A, it starts through training. B, it starts through real accountability. And real accountability means that you have to, for the same reason you don't mess up at your job for being fired, because there's some professions you cannot mess up. Like a pilot cannot say, just didn't have it today. I didn't have it today. You can't, right? A pilot just can't say that. Bus driver just can't say, you know what, just didn't have it today. So to me, understanding training, being on your P's and Q's, and accountability, understanding that these types of situations are not going to be tolerated. You're not going to get the ability to hide behind the shield when you make these infractions. It's going to make you think. So if you are a quote unquote, I'm not going to say the word racist, but if you are someone that's a little ignorant to the people of opposite color than you, this might not be the profession for you. This might not. Because why? We're telling you now, if there is any type of infraction such as this, or after a few of investigations where it's unnecessary roughness or you're going to be fired. There is no reprimanding. No, you will be fired and charged to the letter of the law. Because just saying to me, like, I get to hide, but I mean, think about it. When you pull up this man's, Derek Chauvin's record, there is numerous complaints.
Yep.
So this is a pattern that you guys have allowed to happen. So to me, when we talk about the local level, you want change? This is where change is. We don't protest anymore. You don't do that anymore. What you do, stop burning up your city. Stop burning up your local stops. You know what you do? You go to your local police office. You go to your local, you watch the actions of your district attorney. You watch the actions of your police commissioner. You watch the actions of your mayor. Because those are the three people at the local level that are going to be able to impact the change in your direct community. Amen. Okay, something like this is happening. Bet you put the mayor on notice. Just letting you know, brother. In 2 years, you're out of here. We're not revoting you in. Because let me tell you something about power. People will do anything to keep power. If it means they have to pretend not to be ignorant and just pretend for the status quo that they're so progressive, they will. Trust me and believe. Your district attorney, same thing. You let your district attorney know, hey, when we get the mayor out, we're going to get a new guy in. And what do you think's going to happen? We get a new guy in. You're out of here too. Police commissioner, same thing. We are, I'm telling you, that is how you're going to get change. You do that at the local level and you find people who are going to share the same ideology and the same values. Forget politically. We're talking about human rights. You find people where it is wrong on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Jesus' birthday, your birthday, my birthday. They're wrong to put your neck on an individual for 9 minutes and don't find a problem. And you know what? When you find people who are going to say, not only are you at fault, but your three partners are at fault, that's where there's change going to happen. That's where change is going to happen. So stop burning shit down. Stop going out and destroying your own community. Start being smart. Start being smart on what we do. Start telling people you've been put on notice. This is no longer gonna be allowed on our watch. And that's how you make change.
Let me
That's
tell
how you make change.
And I agree with everything you just said regarding change. And I actually had this exact conversation today at work. And I said, you know what's really bothering me? You know what's really bothering me in this last week? And I keep hearing people keep saying, we need change, we need change, we need to get rid of this, we need change, we need change. Well, what change are you talking about? Okay, and
Yeah.
okay, if someone's out there saying we need change, okay, what are you gonna do? Not you specifically, just in
Yep.
general.
No, no,
Uh,
no, no. What
okay,
what are we
what are
what are
you
you
gonna
doing?
do?
Yeah.
What are you gonna do to help facilitate that change? Are you gonna go talk to your local council people? Are you gonna go start attending those meetings? Are you gonna go hold your representatives accountable and all that and all those things? Uh,
But Dan, let me
so when I'm talking about changes, what is a person going to do? What is a person willing to do on for their local level? What are they willing to do for their community? Are they willing to go to the community board meetings? Are they willing to go start in their own neighborhood? Are they willing to go to town hall meetings? Are they willing to set up town hall meetings? What are they willing to do within their own community and the neighborhood and the surrounding community? What are they willing to do to sacrifice their time and their effort to try to build up a community and to build up that relationship between the community and whoever, and to strengthen that relationship? Like what? Because anybody can sit there and says we need change, we need change. That's like saying, well, you're in Arizona right now, so the Arizona Cardinals suck, they need to do better. Okay, what do they need to do better at? Do they need to get better offensive line, a better quarterback? What do they need to do? Oh, they just suck, they
well, we
just need
got
to be
DeAndre
better.
Hopkins.
What do they need to see to be? They just need to be better. Well, what is that?
Yeah.
How
What
are
is
you going to narrow it down? You got to
what
narrow
does
it
better
down.
look like? Yeah.
Yeah, well, you got to narrow it down. You got to be more specific, because saying change, way too broad, way too many. You need to narrow it down to here and then build on that as it goes out. But you got to narrow it down to what exactly is the lowest fruit, the lowest hanging fruit, and go from there. What exactly is it? And that's the part where it kind of frustrates me when people say change.
But
So
I want
go ahead.
but that's a great point, because I mean we're saying the same thing, and that's great. And this is when I say, like, we see things differently, and why we can be friends is because, again, you having this say, like, what does that mean? And I can tell you, we as people of color have a different mentality when we say we need change.
Sure.
Because anytime we say we need change, we're over policed. And that's really what it comes down to. Whenever we try to do things, from, even think about it as protesting, granted, forget about the looters, because that's not who I'm talking about. Those guys are not a part of the process of what we're trying to ultimately accomplish. But if you notice, it's not the looters that are being beaten up in the streets, it's the protesters. So when you talk about the change, it's, we are just constantly being beaten down. So we as people of color, Hispanics and blacks, and even any type of person of color, anytime you see you're trying to get some form of change or change the status quo, either the narrative is going to be changed on you, or you're going to be beaten down by just the monstrous system that there is. And you see that right now. Anytime, I mean, you see the way that the police department is being with protesters, not people that they find looting the store. You want to find someone looting the store and you want to clock them in their head, you have no complaints from me, because you're not a part of the cause, you are a part of the problem.
Yep.
You understand? Because ultimately you're committing a crime. That's what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You see right now them, and it's not just, and this is what's crazy, they're pushing white people, they're pushing black people, they're pushing Hispanics, they're pushing anyone. And that's what I'm saying, is that at this point, they are so against change that it doesn't matter who you are. You are in front trying to change the status quo or overturn the status quo, anybody can get it. And that's the problem. So when you say, well, what does change look like? We don't even know, because every time we try to talk about change, this is what happens. We either get hit, we either get pushed back down, and it's just, you keep climbing to the mountaintop. You keep climbing, and it's just keep pushed back down.
Yeah.
So again, to me, change isn't protesting, because how long have we been protesting and marching in this country? Now, granted, I get what you're saying. It's the protesters and the marches of Dr. Martin Luther King and John Lewis and those guys in the past that got us to civil rights movement. That's great. But to me, I mean, we march, We march, news cycle, 15 minutes. After that, things go back to status quo. Nothing really changes. We're back here again. We march, we make a lot of noise. We're back here again. I mean, we did this with Trayvon Martin. We did this with Trayvon Martin. We did this with Mike Brown. We did this with Trayvon Martin. We did this with Mike Brown. We did every time you think it's going, this is it. This is the straw that broke the camel's back. Every time you think this is it, this is the straw that broke the camel's back. There was a young man in Chicago that got gunned down from running about 6 years ago, right after the Trayvon Martin, right after the Mike Brown situation. A young man running away from the police officers was shot in the back multiple times. Yeah. He had no weapon. He was just fleeing, and he got shot. You would on TV, on TV. You would have thought that would have been the straw that broke the camel's. Completely wrong. Again, you would have thought that would have been the straw to break the camel's back, and it wasn't. So my thing is, we have to be smarter as a unit, as just a group of people looking for change. And we have to say, we can't ask the police department anymore to help us change. We can't ask, for people. We have to take the power into our hands. Yeah. It starts with us. It starts with saying, what can I do to impact change in my community? What does that look like? And you know what? I hate to say it, and it sounds corny because you hear this all the time. Vote, but vote. You don't like something, go vote. If you got to, but this also makes you, and again, it's not a political show, I'm not trying to, but you can't ask for things to be different if you don't know the person you're voting for.
That's 100%.
You walk into the booth, if you don't know what that candidate stands for, then you're a part of the problem. You are a part of the problem. I tell my friends all the time, do not talk to me. Do not come in and kick it with me. Let's not have any type of conversation of depth. If you can stand in line for Michael Jordan's, but you cannot stand in line to go vote, don't. Because I don't want to hear it. Because your priorities are, effed up. I'm sorry. Yeah. I can't rock with you on that. Because you're the first person to turn around and talk and complain. Well, did you do your part? Because again, when I talked about the marching, it was those people in the past that marched for your ass to get the right to be able to have the opportunity to vote, to get your voice heard, to put the people in place who share your ideology and share the views of you. And you choose to spit on that. So you can't be mad at what the status quo is now. So that to me is like when you talk about change has to start with voting, and it also has to start internally. And you just said it has to take people like you and I who are across the aisle. And I can tell you we're across the aisle because we've had conversations. We are across the aisle, but it takes people across the aisle to understand that. I'm going to give you an example. Chris Rock has a funny joke. I'm not conservative. I'm not Democrat. I'm not Republican. I'm me. Mm-hmm. There's some shit that I'm liberal about, and there's some shit that I'm conservative about. I'm just being real. And that's just me. If you ask me, there's some shit that I'm like, yeah, I don't think we should rock like that. Might share views with a conservative. But then there's things that I might say that I'm a little bit more liberal on. Again, so to me, it takes people, forget affiliation, and you need to find issues that we have commonality on, and that's where the conversation needs to start.
And build on
that's what it is. We're so focused on, and right now, that's what's happening. Because when we talk about the divide, and again, it's not a political thing, it's just an American thing. Even in the divide, what you're seeing now is you're seeing either I'm for police or I'm against police. No, I'm not. I'm just for the fair treatment and equality of when I get pulled over, I get to go back home to my family the same way my white counterparts get to go home. Mm-hmm. Because I tell you right now, if this would have been an issue of black officers killing unarmed white men, that'd have been changed tomorrow.
No, you make a fair point. And I think, you definitely sparked a whole nother idea in my head that I would love to have a conversation like this with you about in the future, about the status quo. You can mention about the status quo, and we do this and we do that, and things stay the status quo. And why does it stay to the status quo? But we'll save that for another discussion, another time down the road. That's about does it for our time, because I don't want to make this. I can't make this a 2-hour conversation here. We can keep going on and on about this. But I really appreciate you coming on here and having the discussion with me. I love you, man. Be safe, and
absolutely. I want to say this before I jump up out of here, man. Like, when we have all this stuff going on in the world, if it doesn't if anyone saw that video, whether you're white, whether you're black, whether you're brown, whatever it is, if that did not make you sick to your stomach, then that's a cause for you to look in the mirror.
Oh, absolutely.
If that didn't, whether regardless of your political beliefs or whether you believe blue lives matters or you don't believe black lives matters, that should have been made you sick to your stomach. And I'm not, the thing that I'm most afraid of, and this is why when you stay safe, is the thing that I'm most afraid of is what you're going to start to see is you're going to start seeing people no longer recording these things. You're going to start seeing them fight back. And that's anarchy. And when you have anarchy, that's the problem. Is because then the system is then the laws are thrown. Now you need to have order. And once there's anarchy, that's where rules and laws that come in effect that hurt you and I, regardless of what side of the aisle we're on. So that's the thing. Like anybody that's watching this, I just encourage you to understand, like Dan and I are so opposite ends of the spectrum in some political issues. We may see things different, and we live two different lives. I'm African-American. He's a white dude from Hialeah, but we live two different lives, but we somehow can still find a way to find commonality and growth and still have a friendship and still have meaningful, meaningful dialogue that have substance behind it, and still at the end of the day dap each other up and say I love you. So it can be done. I know it can be done. I just hope that people watch this, or even anyone that I posted to or on your channel that comes across this understands this can be done. It's just going to take you to have to open up your heart and sit down and have that conversation.
Oh, absolutely, man. I really appreciate your time, man, and we'll get together soon for another conversation. And enjoy your water. I hope you enjoy your drink there.
Hey, man, man, it's hot as shit in Arizona, man. I got to drink a lot of water, man.
You got that dry heat.
It's that dry heat. It ain't no joke, man. But hey, congratulations again. I know the wedding's very close. So I want to say I love you. Congratulations. And my gift's in the mail. I won't be making it, but my gift's coming in the mail. So
there better be a lot of Benjamins in there.
I'm still a black man in America. Chillax. My money went to the bailout.
Hey, when you make it big as a college coach, man, you better send me some tickets so I can come watch.
Oh man, that's courtside seats, baby. That's courtside seats.
I'm gonna drop a play.
Right, man,
Let me drop a play.
I got you. Send it to me. All right, coach.
All right, man.
All right, D. Take care.
Bye.